Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, EmeraldPlanet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the EmeraldPlanet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President, Executive Director of EmeraldPlanet, coming to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States. As we look around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the service, and the products are making a difference as we go through the 21st century. And we're looking for those people that are actually bringing the change to society as the globe moves from 7 billion to 9 billion people by 2050. And so as we move forward, how can we actually enhance the quality of life and include every citizen, regardless of the country, the community, or the family they're in, to actually reveal their true talents and also to actualize in ways that it's important to them and their own country. And so we have an expert sitting beside me, as Dr. Arthur J. Murray, who is the President and CEO of Allied Knowledge Scientists. And he's been working for many years on some very complex computer algorithms and programs, but yet you're taking this into just local communities. So tell us a little bit about Applied Knowledge Services first, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, sure. I guess I fell into that. I was doing my master's degree in environmental energy management at George Washington University, and I didn't know this, but while I was doing that, my advisor was actually building and starting the Institute for Artificial Intelligence. And so naturally I asked him if I could go on for my doctorate with him, and he said sure. And within artificial intelligence, there's this field called knowledge engineering, and it's the study of how what makes decision makers tick, what's going on in their minds, and how can you draw that out of them? Because very often they don't know what it is they're doing. They're using intuitive judgment, and they're very good at what they do. And so knowledge engineering has two parts. It's like,
let's bring up this first slide, because this is a very interesting way to kick this off. And we're talking about this complex interplay with all these different ideas, data, technology. So this is a good image to start off with.
Right. So you know our world, there are two things that are driving everything that's happening in the world, and that is speed and complexity. Right? Everything is changes are happening faster. Products are coming out a lot faster. The whole world can change on a dime, as you see happen sometimes.
Well, and this is one of the things, Art, we know that society, at least based on the best scientific studies, people are about 15, 20 years behind as far as society is concerned with the technology.
That's true, yes. And technology, yeah, we just need to catch up to it. And so that's part of it. And then the second part of this, not only just speed, but complexity. The interconnections are mind-boggling, and that complexity is going to continue to increase as well. So that's the challenge we're facing.
Well, looking at the complexities, I know this is one of the images that you have here as far as this interplay. Looking at the inputs, outputs, what are some of these that are going on simultaneously that either enhance change or impede change?
Usually the difference between enhancing and impeding change is the people and the mindset. Okay, again, the technology and everything's out there. How do you get the people to embrace what change is going on? And there are two ways. Let's
bring that slide back up as far as this interplay that we have here.
That slide shows that two things have to be going on in an organization now. Actually, the clock you see at the top represents the speed of change in the marketplace or in the world around us. All that's change that's talking about at a very high rate. Within our organizations, though, we should be doing two things. An organization basically has to innovate and learn, innovate and learn. Innovation is the forward-looking view, learning is the rearview mirror. And that cycle of innovation and learning has to be happening at least at the same speed that the speed of change is happening in our marketplace. If it's slower, you're falling behind. Most companies are trying to catch up. The very few that are successful manage to just stay a little bit ahead of the curve.
Look at this. One of the things that they talk about is that knowledge is learning by your mistakes, wisdom is learning by the mistakes of others. Where do we incorporate in this complex view right here of how do we take, the knowledge, the technology, everything, and then we grow this wisdom so that as we move forward, actually we can anticipate some of the changes, because I think that's one of the key things we want. How do we anticipate what's across the horizon?
Sure. And probably the best way to do that is where you mentioned how many billions of people are coming to the earth. It's the collective, the ability for us to collectively bring our expertise to the table and then collaborate with each other so that we can anticipate. No one person can actually figure out what's going on, but as we start to connect people together and collaborate and then understand, why things happen the way they are, and then together we say, what can we do to improve upon it the next time occurs? That's when true, we call that knowledge management.
Well, looking at this whole thing, we have this this quote here about connecting the dots. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to slowly move to this next image here. How do people actually connect dots when you have something that is at this level of complexity? And that's whether you're in a developing country in Central Africa or South America, what have you, or you're in a very advanced society like Japan.
Regardless, you should be doing a knowledge inventory. And you should do this at home too. Do try this at home. Take an inventory of what your knowledge assets are, either as an individual, as an organization, or as a nation, third world, first world, whatever. And to do that, you do something like this software example is a knowledge map, basically laying out what are the main things involved. Now, this is a knowledge map of economic resilience. It shows, it lays out all the major components of an economy. And you see here the energy component, healthcare sector, transportation and logistics. So you first of all map those out. That's the first step. Take an inventory of all the different components of your economy and where that expertise is, because it's scattered all over.
Now, when we're going in, like the Power for Peace, which is a project that's been evolving through EmeraldPlanet for a number of years, and we're looking at society, say, in Papua New Guinea or in Micronesia, places where you do not have an elaborate grid, most people do not have access to plentiful energy, many times no other grid like water, sanitation, what have you. How in those very simple societies do we actually take, because again, the decision process is almost as complex as what we're looking at here, but yet it's just at a different level. How do we apply that in those types of societies and make sense of it?
It goes back to that earlier thing we talked about, innovation. You'd be amazed at the human capacity for innovating, and they know better, the local population know better than anybody else how to get around all the obstacles and barriers that they face. And it's amazing. If you really do see some of the things that they do to overcome their obstacles, it'll astound you. So start at the local level and let them decide, what the problem is and how to go about fixing it, and then give them help where they need it. And then the second step is,
in many ways, give them the help they need, but also stay out of the way, correct?
Stay out of the way,
yeah.
But then try to connect some dots like we see here more. If something works in Papua New Guinea, maybe it may not work exactly in another place, but something similar would work, and then try to help the people in another country from reinventing the wheel. You see, if you can share what successes occurred in other small villages, maybe similar situations, they can do that, and they can find improvements, and the whole thing can feed on itself. But you've got to have this tight-knit collaboration in order to do that, and that's the part we still part of our infrastructure. You mentioned water, utilities, and all those things. The thing that we're lacking still is a knowledge infrastructure. An equivalent infrastructure to let knowledge flow across all of our international boundaries so we can help solve these problems better.
Well, looking at this chart right here, it's in front of us, Art, is the nature of allowing people to realize this, but putting in the inputs that is appropriate to that level, but expecting them or allowing them then to really absorb that technology that's coming in so it becomes theirs, and then using, say, the local technical high school or the technical college or the university or whatever's in that local community to then be able to start adapting and changing, maybe even building their own equipment, say for solar or wind or water filtration or what have you, instead of just throwing inputs in from the outside.
Right, and one of the things technology can do now very, very much is help with, for instance, modeling and simulation, getting them to practice, and changing the learning environment from the class, the typical old-style classroom where you're just repeating things back, to a more lively classroom that uses these tools to test their problems and build them and test them out in a simulation in a safe environment and then roll them out.
Well, I think this slide really addresses some of this, where you have the data coming in and we're moving through the system, Art, where you come out with knowledge. And again, I want to keep pushing this envelope a little bit, wisdom. When you go into these very traditional classical societies like a China, Japan, Korea, even a Papua New Guinea, Aborigines in Western Australia, people think in some of those societies there's no knowledge base, yet they have almost 30,000 years of history that they're drawing on. So how do we come out the other end so there's wisdom? So again, we're anticipating the horizon, and then we're putting that back into the mix. So we're drawing on very traditional knowledge and yet putting the new inputs into that.
It's very good. The wisdom you'll find is often more at a personal level. In the West, we've become very impersonal. Subjectivity is frowned upon. Everything has to be scientifically objective. Well, that's important for technology, but what you're talking about is very important. The wisdom, this is the subjective element that is handed down through tradition, and that is just as valuable as the objective knowledge. So if anything, knowledge management, what we've been trying to do in our work is combine those two worlds. The subjective world, which is prevalent in the East, which draws upon tradition, intuition, judgment, wisdom.
And even the Native American tribes within the United States.
Storytelling and things like that. But marry that to the technological advances we've had in the West that tend to be very subjective and impersonal. When you bring those two worlds together, now we've got something.
Well, we have just about maybe 45 seconds left, Art, so it's going to be quick. But looking at marrying these together, how do we start a story base for some of these classical societies that we're really trying to reach out to in Africa, South America, Asia, so that when we go in, it's not like we're taking, the tech manuals, but we're taking something that they can truly look at and absorb very easily.
Right. Take what they do well, which is storytelling. We don't do that very well here in the West. Take what they do well, storytelling, and then put a proper technology package on it so that those stories can be shared. The problem with storytelling is it's passed from person to person, and with 7 billion, 8 billion minds, we're not going to get there from here. So use technology to migrate those stories out across the rest of the world.
Well, it's fascinating, and we're going to be, you're going to stay right with me, Arthur J. Murray, who is the President and CEO of Applied Knowledge Scientists, and we just really appreciate you being with us and sharing, and he's going to be with us on some other segments. And thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Listen to smoke before you give it a try.
Only you.
Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ripped off money. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water.
At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site.
That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff.
You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we work with 143 different nations and activities and projects that are bringing a difference to the 7 billion souls on this planet. But as we go towards 2050 and look at the 9 billion souls that are predicted to be on the planet, how we're going to be able to accommodate all those people, to provide the food, the fuel, the fiber that they need, and to actually develop the intellectual property base, the knowledge base that we talked about earlier, to actually accommodate all of these people. And so we have a number of people looking at it, some looking at it in a very scientific, technological, mathematical formula and how we deal with it. Others are working in a very practical way, day to day, and how we're going to bring about and feed the people. One such person is with us. Her name is McFall. She's CEO of Organic Living for All. She's been on with us before and is actually just rapidly expanding her outreach, not just in Florida, but also around the United States and abroad. So, Jay, are you with us?
I am, Dr. Sam.
Well, glad to have you with us. We have this fantastic photograph of you with this what looks like about 5 or 6 carrots that would make up a truckload by themselves. And so thank you for sharing about organic living.
You are welcome. Thank you for having me here.
Tell us a little bit about organic living, what you're doing, and also you have a unique mission statement. And
yes, our mission statement is teach as many people as possible how to restore the quality of the topsoil so that it contains all the minerals and microorganisms which are essential for health and should be in the soil, and how to grow nutritious, delicious, and healthy food in backyards, community gardens, as well as community-supported agriculture gardens, and how to avoid the abuses and crimes in modern food production, and thus to radically improve the quality of health of the planet and its populations, and to supply organic, healthy plants and soil conditioners to consumers.
my goodness, that's a mouthful, Jay, and thank you for sharing that. But in essence, what we're doing is we have to improve the soils, protect the air and water, and then try to allow everybody, no matter where they are, to be able to start produce some of their own foods. Is that what I get out of that mission statement?
Yes, it is.
That's great. We know that somebody that I know that you're well aware of, Will Allen out in Milwaukee, who has Growing Power. And then I met someone just recently, Robin Schulman of New York City. You know, their philosophy is that we really have to, grow the soil. What do we mean by growing soil?
Well, basically the soil has been overused and filled with toxins for many, many years, and it no longer can grow good food. So we have to put the minerals back into it as well as the organisms. And often we have to create soil because it's so bad. And so one of the products that I have is called biochar, and bio means living, and char has basically been heated up until it's been charred. And this product is actually, millions of years old, but we're able to create it in modern times, and we put it back into the soil, and it helps the soil to hold more moisture, to hold the nutrients longer, and it also takes out carbon dioxide from the air and puts it into the soil for the plants to use, so it's actually cleaning up the air as well. It's a phenomenal product.
Well, looking at the biochar, of course, there's the Accelerite, and there's the EcoSolve and EcoAg and many of these other all-natural products. And really what you're trying to do with your work at the Organic Living is to take natural products that exist within the environment and then enhance the soil. So again, we're not only protecting and enhancing the soil, but protecting the air and the water.
Exactly.
Now, looking at the education, I know you're involved in many demonstrations, seminars. This is one of the things that you really pride your organization on. We first met at CEO Space several years ago. Looking at why is there such an emphasis with your organization where you're actually providing plants and various kinds of all-natural products, but really education is almost the cornerstone of what you're doing.
It is. There are so many people who are so far away from the farms that they don't even realize that you can grow plants and that that's how we get our food. And so when people come to me, they have no idea how to plant, how to maintain, or even harvest the food so that they can eat it. And so we teach all aspects, everything from how to compost, how to prepare the soil properly, how to plant seeds, how to plant plants, how to grow fruit trees, as well as how to make pesto and homegrown tea. And it's just amazing how thankful and grateful people are to learn this stuff again.
Well, that's really important because we really become so dependent on mass merchandisers of all kind, and that doesn't mean that they're not good, but people need to really learn how to care for themselves. And I have sitting beside me Dr. Arthur J. Murray, who is the President and CEO of Applied Knowledge Sciences, and he's here in case we lose you off the telephone, Jay, but he's going to ask a question. So you're going to hear a new voice from Arthur.
Yeah, Jay, hi. And
hi.
Congratulations on the wonderful work you're doing. And as I heard you talking about this, a lot of the 2 billion people that are going to be coming into the world over the next several decades are going to be living in cities. You know, there's a massive migration into cities and probably going to have something like 50,000 new cities. What do you have to offer and suggest to people who will be living in these dense cities? What can they do in terms of organic farming, even when there's very little, if any, soil available to them?
Well, that's a wonderful question because we actually have tower gardens where you can, in 2 square feet, you can grow 20, 60 plants because you're growing vertically. You can have towers of plants coming down, and the amount of soil you would need would be limited. Now, there's so aquaponics, hydroponics, and various other things. There's rooftop gardening. There's all kinds of stuff, and it is possible.
Well, looking at just this scene here, people coming to the garden shop, we know that we're really, as a master gardener, and I didn't introduce you as having that accolade, but being a master gardener is a big deal through the land-grant universities around the United States. You're affiliated, I believe, with Florida State University. But how can we work with the local communities, the nonprofits, youth organizations, communities of faith, to allow them to start learning about how to enhance within their own communities and maybe even at their own facilities, the schoolyards, the churches, these types of places where they can start growing their own food and actually incorporating that food in their own programming?
Yes. In the last couple of weeks, I've worked with the Head Start programs, and we've worked on a garden at one of them, and the other one, we all the children planted mint and took it home. And then I've just recently been working with a Boy Scout, and he put in a garden at his church. And so I donated the plants and the products to rebuild the soil, and so they've got this wonderful little garden growing now at the church. So I try to work with schools and churches and community gardens and whoever it is that needs more information so that they can be more self-sufficient.
Well, I think that's very, very important. And looking at what are some of the things that consumers as we're here in the 21st century and moving towards 2050, what do they need to really be thinking about when they're actually selecting the foods that they're going to use either for themselves in a nuclear family or an extended family situation?
Well, they really need to be aware of the quality of the produce that they're eating. They can go on the internet and look up the Dirty Dozen, because this is a study that's actually done by the FDA, and there are foods in the food supply that have between 47 and 67 toxins in them. It includes commercially grown apples and celery and strawberries and kale and lettuces and those kind of things that people eat every day. And they need to know what are the safest and what are the most toxic things and avoid those toxic plants and buy those organic.
Well, looking at these other products, you were talking about the biochar, and we've actually had the gentleman who invented the biochar, who's from Australia. Then we have Accelerite from the northwest of Nevada, the EcoSolve, EcoAgra, and the other eco-style products, which are made out of corn and other all-natural products. Are there any other all-natural products that can be used, again, going back to this notion of growing soil?
Well, you can actually create compost, from your kitchen scraps and your leaves and those kind of things, and use that as a basis along with the biochar. But you do have to add the minerals back into the soil. And the product that I have also comes from an ancient seabed in Nevada, and it has all minerals that should be in the soil. And it's interesting because the definition of minerals are elements essential for life. Essential, you can't live without them, and it's for all life, whether it be plants, bugs, animals, human, whatever. They're essential. So you have to put that back into the soil, and that makes the plant healthy so that when you eat them, you're getting all the minerals into your body so that your body can function at the maximum amount that it can, or the ideal way.
Well, Jay, this is one of the things that has come up in research studies. If you eat an apple from the 1940s and you have an apple today, they say it takes about 5 apples to have the same minerals and nutrients that we would have had back in the 1940s. That's a huge change. So thank you for being with us. It's good to hear your voice again. You're doing excellent work there with the Organic Living. And this was Jay McFall, CEO. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald.
Too many women get hit by their boyfriends and husbands. Too many women are pressured into having unprotected sex. Half of the people in the world living with AIDS are women. It doesn't have to be this way. Together, we can change this reality. Let's strive for a world free of violence.
At Volunteers of America, we don't just give kids a way to stay off the streets. We give them the tools they need to reach their full potential. We don't just help the elderly receive needed care. We help them live life to the fullest. We don't just provide food for homeless individuals and families. We provide job training and placement so they can buy groceries. Volunteers of America is a national organization that for over 100 years has provided programs and services that allow people to overcome their challenges to become vital members of their community. At Volunteers of America, we don't just help people, we help people help themselves. Find out how you can support the programs that are working in your community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
Drivers face all kinds of distractions.
Guys, stop playing. No. 127 consecutive.
Before your wireless phone becomes one of them, stop. Drive safely. Keep your phone in easy reach and dial sensibly. In bad weather or traffic, call later and use a hands-free device. Remember, with wireless, safety is your call.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we're looking around the globe for those infrastructure needs, the health care, the food, the roads, ports, everything that's needed to bring about a modern society as we expand to accommodate another 2 billion souls that are projected to be on the planet by 2050. And so looking at the basic infrastructure, and we're actually looking at food, water, and energy as part of that basic infrastructure that can actually be brought into the homes, into the communities, even if there's not a grid that's involved. And so I have a gentleman sitting with me that we've actually interviewed a while ago, Dr. Arthur J. Murray, who is the President, CEO of Applied Knowledge Sciences. And Art, thank you for being with us here. And we're trying to bring in one of our Skype guests, and he's not here yet, so you and I are going to have a little chat.
I'll be happy to do that.
Anyway, we're going to go back to this slide that we had talked about a little earlier, but I think there's much more that we can actually bring out of this as far as looking at the inputs. What are the major inputs that we would be looking at, not just in a scientifically based society, but looking at indigenous societies, less complex societies, Africa, Asia, and South America, that we need to be very sensitive to in order to enhance these societies so they're actually leaping forward through the 21st century.
Sure, and they are facing the challenge. It took us, we were able to gradually get to where we are. They are on a much faster track.
Well, we think about, we're so advanced and we've moved forward as United States and Canada and some of these societies, but it's taken us 400 years to instantly create this type of society.
Sure, yeah, instantly over 400 years. If you look at the left-hand side of that chart, a lot of we still have in our mindset the traditional inputs of any enterprise, the raw materials. And you see when we've done projects in developing countries, they tend to be these same, whether they be dams or construction. So we still have kind of the bricks and mortar mindset. Whereas those are important, but what we really need to be looking at for the 21st century is the knowledge economy, and how do we tap the intellectual resources of those people in their local environments to come up with new and innovative ideas that not only they will benefit from, but others around the world that may not have come up with those ideas because they're looking at it from a different perspective. So others can benefit from it as well. So the other side of the left-hand side of that diagram, the bottom part says the raw materials of the knowledge economy, data, information, and knowledge. We need to be looking and paying just as much attention to those inputs as we do the bricks and mortar and the steel and the rebars and everything else.
Well, looking at the power for peace, we're looking at where you bring in the solar panels or the wind cages. Then you'll have the repeater tower so you can provide cell phone service or be able to pump water through these micro units that are setting out there. But when you look at it, it's really the same level of complexity if you're looking at a small village in Uganda or Papua New Guinea or Micronesia as you have trying to work with people in downtown Manhattan, although they may not want to think that way. As far as bringing in new inputs as far as growing their own food or having beekeepers and having these microbreweries, really the decision-making process is almost identical across all these different societies.
Sure. And that illustrates the major change that's happening here. In the past century, people and the materials all had to migrate to where the work was. Now, what's different about this world, totally different, totally upside down, is the work is going to where the knowledge is, right? So the source of the knowledge is what's important, and then how do we move that? That knowledge can move around the world, overnight, and it does. Some companies that are developing technology projects, the work follows the sun, as they say.
Exactly. And also, too, about this whole thing as far as we're talking about organics and growing food and having all these inputs locally, is that we really need to look at how do we allow the people to really look back, reach back into history, back into their families that many of them been here 100, 200, 300 years, and draw on that knowledge base and bring that forward into the 21st century. And we have somebody, Jay McFall, who is the CEO of Organic Living. Jay, I believe you're back with us by telephone.
I am.
Well, glad to have you back. And let's talk a little bit about the people that you're working with. You've heard Dr. Arthur Murray talking about what we're doing and how we're solving these complex issues and looking at a knowledge-based society, whether it's here, or Uganda, South Africa, or El Salvador somewhere. But in your own home state of Florida, how are you incorporating the new generations, the 20-somethings, the school children, so they realize that what was going on here 50, 100 years ago as far as food production and feeding families actually is now in vogue, and we need to be gathering back some of these this traditional knowledge?
Well, that is very interesting that you asked that, because I have a lot of young people that I work with. And as a matter of fact, when I give my workshop, some of them cost the adults, but the children are always free. And when the children come, they love it. And I have a success story that one of my parents wrote, brought daughter. She said, "Thank you for the soil preparation class. There were some really simple secrets you told us that will make all the difference. Evan, my 11-year-old, loved the class. Thank me for bringing him. We both loved the tour and the taste testing of all the herbs."
Well, I think this is something that's very important, that people are not just sitting in class and gathering knowledge and then hopefully going out and doing something with it. I think what you're doing, Jay, is that it's a hands-on type of experience. As we would say in the 4-H world, it's learn by doing, and you're involving all the generations. You have the youth, mom and dad, and maybe even the grandparents involved, so they feel like that they're all part of this process.
Exactly true. When I do the full soil preparation, it's so much fun, because one time I probably had about 5 kids, and they were digging the holes, and I teamed them up with other people so that they were working with another person, and they were in there digging and planting, and they loved it. And it was nice because they got to work with people they didn't know, and they just formed this relationship, and they made friends with other adults. It was very, very rewarding.
As you know, I have Art Murray with me. He's here in case we lose you by your telephone connection, Jay, but he has a burning question. He says he has to ask it now. So we're going to put him on the spot, and so here's Art with his question.
Okay, Jay, I wanted to pick up from what you were talking about, getting the whole family involved, but you've been talking a lot about the growing side, from the soil and the planting and the cultivating, but the food chain goes far beyond that. Can you give us some thoughts on keeping the involvement of the family and the community, not only just from growing and harvesting, but then you have storage, you have preparation, and along those other steps, we can lose a lot of nutritional value in our food. What are your thoughts on the whole thing from, let's say, from ground to fork?
From what to what?
Oh, from ground, from the soil, all the way to the plate. In other words, there are several steps we can do. We can replenish the soil and do our organic gardening and even buy our organic food. But still, there are some other steps that we need to be looking out for, right, in terms of how we store it and then prepare it. We can often lose a lot of that nutritional value in the preparation. So how about some of those other steps getting to the point where we consume the food? What do we need to be thinking about along the way there?
Well, some of the other classes that I teach are how to make homemade pesto, and we go right out into the garden. We pick the fresh basil, the fresh parsley, and I actually incorporate some other plants into the pesto as well. And we go back into the kitchen, we make the pesto, and then we slice some vegetables and we eat it. So they see how to go out in the garden and harvest, prepare it, and eat it. I also teach how to walk out into the garden and pick fresh herbs to make cheese. And we do that. We pick them, we put it into hot water, we let it simmer for a little bit, and then we drink the cheese. I also teach how to dehydrate food, how to use all kinds of different things fresh from the garden to make fresh salads.
Well, that's all very important, Jay. I'm going to bring this diagram back up because I think this fits right in, Jay, to what you're talking about. And then, Art, since you asked a question, you know it's always going to come back to you. So anyway, looking at the outputs and looking at this total supply chain as far as food, you talked about starting with the seed in the soil all the way to the fork. And using that, of course, we can take the residue and make compost out of it. But how can we close this loop, this learning speed that you're talking about when we're involving multiple generations in this whole soil to fork process?
Well, one thing that Jay's has been talking about that kind of hit me, and it goes back to we were talking about the experiential side of it. You know, we focus a lot on classroom knowledge and education. But what Jay described about actually going out in the garden and getting the ingredients and then preparing them on the spot and eating them while they're still fresh.
Or taking the herbs and making the tea out of it, boiling it and drinking it.
So that's part of that innovation and learning. That's doing it on an experiential level that then you can share with others, because I'm sure once somebody, you try some different mixtures and some different recipes, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to share that with others. So in terms of that diagram, yes, we've got a whole new area of learning now. How do we restore the nutritional value to our food that we've lost? And that's going to take several of those cycles, but what you're doing is tremendous. You're at least getting that process started. And now I think it's up to us to share and spread the word.
All right, Jay, we're going to let you have the last word. We brought you on, but you have about 15 seconds. What would you like to get across to our domestic and international guests about closing this loop as far as what we have as far as soil to plate?
Well, the products that we sell actually rebuild the soil with the minerals and the microorganisms, as well as superfood and the biochar. And we do send those out. They can be ordered on our website. So if anybody wants them,
Jay, we're going to lose you. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
I would like to speak English better.
Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
Por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
el Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
Capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals.
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos
Are a small part of what we do.
son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
Para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia,
comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Hey, Lena, where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half of it.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we're looking around the globe in 143 different nations, very different countries. Many of them are quite developed and have been working hundreds of years to build an appropriate infrastructure to take care of all the needs of their citizens. Many other are developing nations that are emerging economies, doing quite well as we move through the 21st century, but yet are at a time when they have to greatly expand the infrastructure as more and more people move from the rural areas into the cities. As you're well aware, we're now over 50% of the world's population, about 55% actually, that are living in urban areas, and they're saying by 2050 that over 70% of the world's population will be living in urban areas. We also know that there are some countries, such as Brazil, already has 87% of its people living in urban areas. So when you look at these different countries, the disparities between nations, the investment in infrastructure, how can we move forward in ways that are bringing some of these developing, emerging societies to the fore? We have two gentlemen that are joining us actually from Haiti, and Zachary Bramer, who is a Director of Research, and Jeffrey Sejour, who is the Director of Finance and Local Training for a group called International Action. And International Action has been working there for a number of years. Their focus is on water, and of course, as many of you know, almost 1.5 billion people around the globe either have no access to water, or most of the water is actually very dirty. And so there are techniques, and as we talk about in the Power for Peace, we want something as total, portable, and inexpensive as solutions. So Zach and Jeff, welcome from, I believe you're in Port-au-Prince, Haiti.
Yes, that's correct. Both Haiti. Hey, Sam, thanks for...
Well, you're fading in and out, and I'm sure our sound engineer will be working with you. But Zach, let's start off with you as far as the research is concerned. International Action, when I first heard about it, was serving about 400,000 people a day. Now you're almost at 800,000 in just a couple of years. How has International Action been able to double its outreach and service within such a short period of time?
Well, the main thing is that we are working more with other international groups as a group to find communities that need clean water. So we have communities now asking us, instead of going out to communities and seeing if they do need clean water. And so we get several requests to go in and install our chlorination system. And we've gotten particular funding to move into our new place in Haiti, in the southeast of Haiti, in Jacmel. And right now, that is one of the big reasons that we were able to improve our numbers so much, is we're helping 100,000 people with clean water.
Well, I think one of the things that has really proven the success of International Action over the years that we've known your executive director and others within your board of directors is that you're really involving the community. And you can't see this, but we have a scene of a community meeting here of people coming together and talking about how to reach out and meet the needs. And I know, Jeff, you have kind of a dual role. One is Director of Finance, but then also local training. So what types of activities are you using to include the community? And actually, I think how you've been successful is that you're really making them the key, and you're really the support role to the community leaders.
Yes, that's correct. This program has been, as far as getting the community involved, I think that's the major strength in our program. And the community leaders actually know how to test the water, accurate number of water, and then the report if there's too low, we teach them how to get level. There's too much chlorine. So getting the community involved, charge of it, so they take their sure it's secure, pocket, so it becomes part of their whole part of the project. That's very helpful a lot. Sam, if I can add one thing to that, the main reasons we're down in Haiti is we're trying to find a way to our program into something that's completely sustained by the community. And we're working with communities to try and start up a chlorine bank system so that the distribution of chlorine is completely run by local organizations rather than going through us at all.
Well, I think that's very important both to Zach and Jeff down in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And we're coming up with some slides. You're fading in a little bit with your telephone, so our sound engineer is trying to moderate that. But I think the last thing you were talking about is how you really try to enhance local organizations and the community leaders. And looking at that process, how do you, is there like a 1, 2, 3 step that you go through to involve the leaders as well as all ages from within the community?
Well, I think the first, when you meet with the leaders, you don't tell them what you ask them what they want and what we have that we could help. So it's more of a discussion rather than us telling them, okay, this is what you need to do, here's how to do it. We show them a few possible ways to do something, and they tell us which way they like the best. And when you do it that way, communities are a lot more open to working with you, and the system is a lot more likely to be continued after you are done being the main involvement of it.
Well, I have Dr. Arthur J. Murray, who is the President CEO of Applied Knowledge Sciences here in Washington, D.C. area. This is some of the things that he's been talking about with us about how do you enhance and foster this knowledge base with local communities. So I'm going to have him ask the next question, and if we happen to lose you, he's here with me, and but we're going to move forward. So you have a question for either Zach, Jeff, or both?
Sure. Yeah, I'll let Zach and Jeff pick what they want to answer. Yeah, a lot of the work that we've done is looking at the fragility of our, because our systems are so complex and entangled that they're becoming more and more fragile. And I know Haiti had a devastating earthquake in 2010, and I believe your organization was there both before and after the earthquake. What experiences can you share with us about the resiliency of the Haitian people, and what was the most significant ingredient in springing back from that disaster?
I think, especially in our community, the major factor is that water board members are like the local government, because they get little to no support from the actual government. They're basically in charge of their public health. They're in charge of schools, supplies, from schools and access to water. And we primarily work, call them water boards in different area communities, and we get them together through training and other things like that. And definitely they've showed a lot. After the earthquake, they all called in, and they were sending out trucks. And so they basically were, the system we had established in 2006 was able to strong. We were able to communicate water to water distribution. I think that's a very strong aspect. I will say one thing with it was obviously a terrible event, but it actually improved our ability to educate the populace, because they were coming together for meetings at churches and schools more often because they wanted to get involved, bring the community back together. So more people were actually listening to water education our staff in Haiti were presenting. And I think that's been the key part. People are really, really wanting to listen and get involved with their communities after the earthquake, and even still now, when the initial damage from the earthquake has been at least mitigated somewhat.
Now, looking at Zach, this will go to you, and then Jeff, if you would like to follow on. Looking at the new resources that you've been able to identify, many organizations have been trying to help in Haiti, but many other countries across the globe that have had disasters, such as Turkey, even in Taiwan, Indonesia, many other places. What new resources are out there, or is it really just looking inside the country and trying to find out what's the best way to rationalize resources that are already there and exist? What's the balance between trying to bring in new and then trying to balance what's there and maybe more rationally use those resources?
I think first that it has to do with using the resources already there. Haiti had a huge influx of money after the earthquake, but there was so much people, and people didn't know how to use it exactly, and groups weren't coordinating it. The money wasn't being spent as efficiently as it could have. And so I think really it's finding what is already in place in the country and making sure you're working with those resources so you aren't duplicating efforts. And that is a real thing, finding a way to coordinate it and set up some sort of base forum where groups and organizations and just community members can talk and figure out what they already have and what they still need.
Yes, I would like to add on to that, definitely I think see more, especially in Haiti, there's so many NGOs here that there needs to be better cooperation. A lot of overlapping programs that are done by one organization in one town, and right next to it they're doing the exact same program. So better communication, cooperation. I think after the earthquake developed the watch clusters, there's better communication with which group control this area, and they supply sanitation, water, education, and a group of that. So I think communication through the water clusters will help communication better.
Well,
but go ahead.
Go ahead. Let me ask this question. I think I just lost you there, both Zach and Jeff from Port-au-Prince, Haiti. But having worked in Haiti myself over a number of years with the Rotary Club of South Richmond and Richmond, Virginia, and then also Rotary International, what we learned is that the Haitians are very resilient people. They're very kind, very ingenious in the types of ways that they address problems. What do you think that the world has to learn from Haiti? And we only have about 30 seconds and we have to be off. So it needs to be quick. What can the world learn from Haiti?
I definitely, throughout the years, Haiti has gone through hurricanes, floods, and most recently the earthquake. And even though they're probably the most strong-spirited people, after every disaster, they still keep their heads up, and they still day to day and nothing happening. And I think I really congratulate these people. They always have a smile on their face. That's one thing Haitians are known for, always having smiles on their face, no matter what the circumstances is.
Well, thank you, Zach and Jeff. Best wishes to you in Haiti. Thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.